And at this time, I'm going to change the presenter to our next speaker, who is Jessica Klement. And she is the staff vice president for the for NARFE, and is someone who has spoken to us on multiple occasions. And we are honored to have her today. I will make you the presenter here in a moment so that you have full control over all this good stuff. There we go. And it's all yours. Oh, we're not hearing your voice. Let me look at the...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
I usually keep my earphones in, but I couldn't get them to sync with GoToMeeting. So I apologize for that. If you guys, if I am too quiet at any point in time, which has never been a problem in my entire life, but in the event it is, please shoot me a quick message. I can see the messages here. So I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint. That's the end. We want to start at the beginning. All right, I'm going to assume you guys can all see that. Henry, I can no longer see you. Okay, great. This is good. I don't even have to stare at my own picture while I'm giving this presentation. So hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you today. I'm Jessie Klement, Staff Vice President for Policy and Programs here at NARFE. I have met many of you over the years. I've been at NARFE for over 9 years now, so I know I've crossed paths with many of you. Thank you for being here. In this role as VP of Policy and Programs, I not only oversee our advocacy department, but I also oversee the NARFE Federal Benefits Institute. So I'm going to try and move through this presentation really quickly, as quickly as I can, because I think your questions are most important, particularly that last one that you guys asked of Dave, which I'd be happy to address during the Q&A as well. Let's get started. I'm going to take a look at the 117th Congress. I'm going to talk a little bit about NARFE's interactions with the new administration, as well as ongoing conversations we were having with career staff prior to the change in administration. I'm going to talk about our legislative priorities for the Congress, and then how our grassroots campaigns tie into those priorities. I am going to convince all of you to attend LegCon 21, which is next month. And after that, I'm going to convince all of you to donate to NARFE. And after that, I will take your questions. So let's start with a look at the 117th Congress, which is 2021 to 2022. As I'm sure you all know, Democrats, oops, did I lose that? There we go. Democrats, you guys can see my screen, right? The PowerPoint, sorry, I clicked the little box closed so I could see my screen. Democrats control House, Senate, and the White House. Very narrow majority in the House that keeps changing as vacancies come up, but I think it's about a 5-seat margin for the Democrats. There is also a 50-50 split in the Senate, so any tie-breaking vote will be cast by Vice President Harris. Something that has been getting a lot of attention lately is budget reconciliation. And because it is talked about a lot by NARFE and in the news, I thought it would be helpful to give you guys an overview on what budget reconciliation is. It is an expedited procedure for bills in the Senate that allows for changes in taxes and mandatory spending programs. In the Senate, to pass a reconciliation bill, you only need 51 votes. So this is often used when there is a slim majority in the Senate by whatever party. So we saw this with the most recent American Rescue Plan Act. We saw this previously with Trump's tax changes, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare in the Obama administration, and also the Bush tax cuts in the early 2000s. As you can see by that list, there's usually one per administration, one per president. Not so much this year. We are talking about reconciliation a lot. And because of the pandemic, Congress, as you all know, is spending a lot of money. So one of the things I hear from the NARFE members often is, can we use reconciliation to repeal or reform the GPO and WEP? Like everyone else is getting what they want in these COVID relief packages, can we too? And you can't. I hate to break it to you, but this is probably not the first time I'm going to give you bad news as it relates to GPO and WEP in this presentation, because The Byrd rule does not allow for changes to Social Security in the reconciliation process. This is only for changes to taxes and other mandatory spending programs. So that's, I hope, provides you a better understanding of what reconciliation is and why it's been getting so much attention lately. But Congress has other things to do, right? It's not just all pandemic all the time, or it certainly shouldn't be, or should I say pandemic and infrastructure. We don't have spending caps for fiscal year 2022 or 23. Congress has in the past set 2-year spending deals that set those budget spending levels for the fiscal years. Appropriations take those limits, and then they divvy up the money amongst their 12 committees. But no one's really talking about that. It is May. The president's budget has not been released yet. This is fairly late, even for a presidential election year. And if spending increases are put forward above the sequester levels, will they need offsets? A lot of unknowns right now as it relates to where we're going to go with spending and appropriations for the coming year, which dovetails really nicely. Ooh, why did that? Okay, sorry. Let's see if I can keep that moving. There we go. Which dovetails really nicely into the outreach NARFE has been having with the executive branch lately. You know, Congress isn't the only game in town. I'd like to take a look at what we expect from the Biden administration and also some of the ways we've been working with the administration. As you guys know, as I'm sure you do, now President Biden, then candidate Biden, responded to NARFE's candidate questionnaire. Just as a matter of protocol, I feel the need to point out that President Trump did not respond to any candidate questionnaires for his second election. The campaign did let us know that they were not responding to candidate questionnaires. So here's what we learned from then candidate Biden in response to his candidate questionnaire. I believe we received it back in September. All the things that you as NARFE members would want to hear, you know, opposes changes to retroactively change federal retirement benefits, such as increasing contributions or reducing COLAs, opposes any efforts to reduce benefits under FEHB, supports full repeal of GPO and WAP, and supports using the CPIE for Social Security COLAs. I don't want to spend a lot of time on these slides because the questionnaire is still on the NARFE website. I'm using them to kind of show you as an example of what the administration said back in September as a marker for what we can expect from them moving forward. The administration also made a number of statements as it related to pay raise, health benefits for postal retirees, including not forcing postal retirees to enroll in Medicare, something I will be talking about later in this presentation, as well as supporting the civil service and modernizing the federal workforce. So that's all well and good, but what has NARFE been doing to advance those goals? First, we did have a meeting with the Biden transition team following the election for OPM. This gave us an opportunity to express our thoughts on where we think OPM should go, as well as our priorities as it relates to federal benefits, which OPM administers. Following the election, we also sent a letter to the Biden administration outlining our priorities for the administration, protecting retirement and health benefits, revitalizing the federal workforce, and of course, repealing GPO and WAP. Over the last few years, we have built really strong relationships with the personnel team, performance and personnel management team over at OMB. Those relationships have been strengthened over the years. Those are mostly with career staff, but the new political leadership for that team will be speaking at LegCon 21. I think it'll be the first time we've had someone from the administration speaking at LegCon. So not only do we have ongoing communication with the new political leadership at OMB, but we are strengthening those relationships as well. Many of the new political leadership at OPM that's come into place before the director's nomination are people we've known for a long time, so we have ongoing communication with them as well. I will say the administration has done a pretty good job of keeping the federal employee groups up to date and informed as it relates to COVID requirements for the federal workforce. We've also had a lot of interaction with folks at OMB, GSA, OPM, as it related to the recently ended Public Service Recognition Week. It was nice to see an administration lead on PSRW instead of following. So we had a lot of interaction with the political leadership and career folks in support of Public Service Recognition Week. I will take this opportunity to thank you all for your service as well. So, talked about all these great things that NARFE is doing with the administration. What's next? Well, one of the areas we're focusing on is OPM modernization and reform. The National Academy of Public Administration report on OPM came out in March. A number of the proposals in there NARFE is supporting. We've had numerous meetings with congressional staff on the next steps for that report. I don't have to tell any of you that the retirement processing process over at OPM needs some improvements, but we can't start and stop there. Federal human capital management has been on GAO's high risk list since 2001. We have a human capital problem in the federal government. It is time to move on that as well. I feel fairly strongly, I say it in many Hill meetings, that if we don't act within the next 2 years to improve federal human capital management, we are not going to. This is the opportunity to do it. The appetite is there. It is a lot of work, but it's time to do it. Which is to say nothing of how the congressional agenda will tie into this. The meetings I've been having on the Hill are very focused on getting the OPM director confirmed by the full Senate until moving on any of these issues. I think that's a bit short-sighted, but that's just me. So that covers the administration. Let's take a look now at NARFE's legislative priorities for this Congress. I'm sure none of them will come to you as any surprise, including repeal of the GPO and the WEP. This has been a top priority for NARFE. Well, probably I'm going to go ahead and guess since these two provisions became law, one in the late 70s, one in the early 80s. There is legislation in both the House and Senate that would fully repeal both of them entirely. Like I said, I'm going to go over our priorities, and then after this, I will talk about the action you guys can take to advance them. So I just want to take a second to talk about the WEP reform bill and why NARFE supports WEP reform. Let me start with that last point first. I get the question a lot, and I mean a lot. And I'm guessing some of you have this question too. Why are we supporting WEP reform? WEP and GPO repeal should be our only priority, and are we diluting our ask on full repeal if we support reform? I can assure you we are not. Politics is the art of the possible. And I can tell you, with one of those provisions that is now over 40 years old and one pushing 40, the chances of full repeal on either of those two bills, regardless of the amount of action NARFE took on it, is very slim. And it is my job to promote legislation that benefits you as NARFE members. And I can see in the political tea leaves the opportunity for WEP reform. And if I have an opportunity to get you $150 more per month as opposed to $0 more per month, I'm going to take it. And we can do that with this bill, the Public Servants Protection and Fairness Act, which was introduced by House Ways and Means Chairman Richie Neal. For those who are over the age of 62 in 2023, so probably most of you watching right now, your WEP you would receive a rebate of $150 per month to offset your WEP penalty. For those who are not yet 62 or turned 62 in 2023 or later, your WEP penalty would be calculated using a new formula that looks at total earnings instead of just Social Security earnings, which for 99% of the population is going to lower your WEP penalty. If you are that small piece of the puzzle where it doesn't lower your WEP penalty, the current formula would be used to calculate your WEP penalty. So I think there is an opportunity here to also move forward with some WEP reform. I'm going to give you guys some numbers on this later in the presentation. NARFE's, another priority for NARFE is accurate cost of living adjustments for federal retirees. This was something that was new to me a handful of years ago, so I'm guessing it's probably new to some of you. If the COLA, the annual COLA, is greater than 2% FERS retirees do not receive the full COLA that CSRS and Social Security beneficiaries receive. They receive a smaller COLA than that. So the Equal COLA Act, HR 304, which was introduced this Congress, would put the FERS COLA on par with the others. Of course, NARFE supports that legislation. And then there is the Fair COLA for Seniors Act, which would, use the CPIE to measure cost of living instead of the current CPIW, which would lead to higher COLAs in most years for federal retirees. NARFE also supports legislation to do that. That has not yet been introduced this Congress. NARFE also supports a market pay raise for federal employees in 2022. There is legislation in both the House and Senate that would provide federal employees a 2.2% across the board pay raise and an additional 1% for locality pay. Those are averages. It is exceptionally likely that Biden's budget will include a 2.7% pay raise for federal employees, which includes the locality pay. NARFE will be supportive of that as well, as that is how private sector wages moved in the previous 12 months. But we also support these bills as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about postal reform. And I know there are several on the call who have heard me speak about this before. I'm just going to ask you this. If you are a federal retiree or a federal employee and not a postal employee or a postal retiree, you're probably about to roll your eyes and you're going to say, here we go again. I got to hear about postal reform. I can assure you, you just stick with me for about 30 more seconds. I'm going to tell you why everyone on this go-to meeting should care about postal reform. But first, there are a number of things NARFE supports as it relates to the Postal Service. I'm going to take a drink of this water and let you guys just read the slide. As it relates to the last one, the protecting postal retiree health benefits, including preserving choice for Medicare Part B, this is something that NARFE has been very active on over, well, I came to NARFE 9 years ago, so I'm going to say at least over the last decade, because postal reform was new to me when I came to NARFE, but it is something that we have been working on a lot over the years. And here's why. Previous iterations of the postal reform bill, postal reform legislation, would have forced current postal retirees into Medicare, because the Postal Service has this pesky pre-funding requirement that was on the previous slide from 2006 that said the Postal Service must pre-fund its retiree health benefits 75 years in advance. So we're talking about not only people who don't work for the Postal Service yet, but who literally haven't even been born yet. And the Postal Service has to do that in a 10-year budget window, which meant by 2017, the Postal Service was supposed to have about $100 billion in a fund to pay for retiree health benefits. Unsurprisingly, following the recession about a decade ago, the Postal Service had to stop making payments to that fund. So to lower its liability, the Postal Service wants to enroll all of its retirees in Medicare. Well, how does that lower their obligations? Because, as many of you probably know, when you have Medicare Part B and you have your FEHB plan, Medicare pays first, right? Which means that the costs of the entire FEHB program go down, which recalculates the Postal Service's pre-funding requirement. As a matter of precedent and principle, NARFE objects to the changing of retiree benefits in retirement. Previous iterations of this legislation would have forced postal retirees, whether they be 66 or 95, into Medicare Part B, waiving the late enrollment penalties, but incurring a cost of, right now, a minimum of $148.50 a month. Not okay. It looks like we finally got that piece of this into the latest draft iteration of postal reform legislation, which will be considered by committee tomorrow on the House side. However, that legislation also provides some increased risks for FEHB participants in terms of its risk pool. This is something that I was literally working on up until the moment I returned my camera on, as the markup is tomorrow. So I'm just going to say stay tuned for more information. Please read NARFE Newsline on Tuesdays. I will provide you an update. I will say this, there is a willingness among committee staff to work with us on this and to get the bill into a place that NARFE can support and get on board with, but that can't be done if it risks undermining FEHB for the rest of the federal population. So stay tuned for more information on postal reform in the coming days. Lastly, NARFE has been working with coalition partners as well as the Hill on revitalizing the federal workforce. We have been pretty supportive of the nominee to direct the Office of Personnel Management. It is imperative that that person be a human capital expert so we can get federal human capital to where it needs to be. Also focus on personnel practices, modernizing those. I think if we've learned anything in the last 14, 15 months, it's that there are jobs that we can do from anywhere. I am currently sitting in my office, but I can tell you I could have easily been at home today too and gave you the exact same presentation. The future of work is changing and the federal workforce has to as well. And we've been trying to force some committee hearings on addressing federal human capital. So now that you have a sense of the priorities, what can you do to take action to advance them? And I'm just going to point out from the beginning that this is a concerted effort. It's your lobbyists at headquarters. It is your grassroots advocates in the field. It is supporting NARFE PAC to get in front of members of Congress more than we would have otherwise. So I'm going to ask you guys to do a lot in the next few slides. Please know that this is something that all of us are being asked to do, not just the field. How can you take action? Well, you can have meetings. I'm going to talk to you guys about LegCon a little later. And meetings with members of Congress is a key component of that. You can call your representative's office. You can write them using NARFE's Legislative Action Center. We have action alerts on every one of NARFE's legislative priorities. Strongly encourage you to edit them so it looks like you wrote them and not like somebody else did. It gets a lot more attention when it is not a form letter. So please take a moment to change it. I often joke, throw in a typo or two. It will most definitely look like a constituent wrote it and not like a government affairs professional did. Also change the subject line. Little tips for more effective letter writing. Okay, so as it relates to those priorities, first and foremost, GPO and WEP, repeal and reform bills. In looking at the full repeal bill, 2 of your North Carolina members are co-sponsors of that bill, Price and Manning. And as it relates that neither of your senators, I didn't forget them, neither of your senators are co-sponsors. As it relates to the reform bill, which only has a House version, 3 of your North Carolina reps are co-sponsors of that as well. The full repeal bill currently has 142 co-sponsors, and the reform bill currently has 154, literally as of about 4 hours ago. Why do I tell you this? Because current House rules, which can change by majority party, House rules are voted on every 2 years at the beginning of each Congress. Current House rules state that any bill which reaches 290 co-sponsors will be guaranteed a floor vote. There was postal legislation to repeal the pre-funding requirement last Congress that got a vote because it had reached its 290 co-sponsors. I think we can do that with one or both of these bills. And that is why it is imperative that you continue to contact your members of Congress from North Carolina, particularly in the House, who are not on the screen right now, and ask them to co-sponsor these bills. As it relates to the Equal Coal Act, which would put FERS COLAs on the same level playing field as CSRS and Social Security COLAs, none of the North Carolina representatives are co-sponsors. So I'm going to ask you all to take a moment and ask your representative to co-sponsor that as well. For the federal pay raise, Representative Price is the only co-sponsor of that as well. So please take a moment to ask your member to co-sponsor that. Or if you live in Price's district, please feel free to send him the thank you letter for co-sponsoring. I think we can all agree that it feels really nice to feel appreciated. So I don't think it ever hurts to send those thank you letters. So those are just a couple, well, those are 3 of the active campaigns we have going on the Legislative Action Center. Of course, if you want to take action on something that I didn't talk about, or that we don't actually have an action letter on, you can write your own using NARFE's Legislative Action Center as well. So I want to talk a moment, I'll be brief, I promise, about LegCon 21. I can assure you I will not be brief when it comes to NARFE PAC, so I'll take LegCon to be brief. LegCon 21 is NARFE's Legislative Training Conference. Registration is now open for this all virtual training conference. We have a very exciting program planned, and we're also in the works, also adding speakers as we go almost every day. I'm probably a lot like you guys, right? Like, I'm ready for life to return to normal. I'm a lobbyist, I'm an extrovert. I like being in a room full of people and interacting. And it was a very difficult decision to move LegCon virtual. I actually think you guys are going to be exceptionally impressed with the program that we are putting together to make the most of this virtual training conference. It is in June. Registration is now open, and the early bird registration rate ends on Friday. So if you are considering coming, if you guys are talking as a federation, whether or not you can support sending your members to LegCon, I strongly encourage you to make those decisions in the next couple of days so you can take advantage of the early bird registration rate. If you have questions about group registration, I can answer those as well during the Q&A. Well, why should you guys come? I know you guys, in a lot of ways, North Carolina is ahead of the curve from other NARFE federations. I know these virtual meetings are not new to you, right? And North Carolina has long prioritized advocacy, and as the person who leads the advocacy department, I really do appreciate that. So you guys know a lot. Why should you spend 2 days in front of your computer learning about advocacy and then spending the final days meeting with your members of Congress? Well, because there's always something new to learn. And we have new staff in the advocacy department who I think bring a really fresh perspective to grassroots and have these great new bold ideas that you can not only learn for yourself, but also take back to others in the federation. And like I said, there's always something new to learn, and relationship building is a big part of being successful in our advocacy efforts. And that virtual meeting, that lobby day at the end, is really a key way to continue building and strengthening relationships with congressional offices. I am confident that you will receive at least the same, if not increased interest and success from this conference, given that it is virtual. I'm very excited. I'm very pleased with how this program is coming together. So I encourage you all to attend or consider attending, particularly if you are a CDL and SL or really just want to learn more about NARFE's legislative priorities in more than the 45 minutes I have to give you guys here today. So I'm going to close with NARFE PAC, my favorite of all the topics, as you guys know. NARFE PAC is NARFE's Political Action Committee. It is the way we can contribute to those who's running for congressional office who support NARFE's legislative agenda. But I also know that there is a lot of misconceptions out there about NARFE PAC. So bear with me as I take a minute to tell you what NARFE PAC is. NARFE PAC is NARFE's political arm. Well, what does that mean? It means that NARFE members make voluntary contributions to this political action committee. We then use that money to support the campaigns of people running for Congress, right? It is another way to get NARFE in front of lawmakers, to get NARFE members in front of lawmakers, to get leaders, and also because we do spend some money on party committees, we get inside information, we get election updates. It is another great way to not only keep the lobbyists informed, but then allow us to keep you guys informed. It's really just another way to keep NARFE visible to members of Congress and their staff. But what NARFE PAC is not, I find, is more often the source of confusion. It's not partisan. The biggest factor in whether or not we give someone NARFE PAC money is their support of NARFE issues. For incumbents, that means their NARFE voting record. For candidates, that is the NARFE candidate questionnaire. We do not give money in presidential races. I'm sure a lot of you are saying, I know that. Well, I know that too. But when the NARFE magazine only receives a candidate questionnaire from one, I don't know why that is doing that, from one candidate and not the other, there is the assumption that NARFE gave money to Biden or NARFE gave money to Clinton. I assure you we did not do those things. We don't use it in the presidential race. It is not the calendars or notepads or any other little gift you get from NARFE. I'm going to tell you the easiest way to remember it, because I hear this from NARFE members a lot, like, Jesse, I already thought I made a contribution of $100. Can you look it up? And I do. I look it up, and it was a general fundraising. It wasn't NARFE PAC fundraising. So here's the way to keep it simple. You get a letter in the mail from the NARFE president, and it is telling you all the great things NARFE is doing and asking for your support. And as a thank you for your financial support, have this notepad that is personalized with your name on it. That is not NARFE PAC. NARFE PAC is not going to give you a gift until you give us money first. Excellent way. And then I will send you a nifty little pin. I'll show you on the last slide. It is also not a connected fund of NARFE. Well, what does that mean? That means that your dues money never, or any other money, general fundraising, whatever, it does not commingle with the PAC. PAC the money in, PAC money out, completely separate fund of the association. Here are some numbers from the last cycle. Every PAC cycle is looked at in 2 years. So the most recently completed cycle is 2019 to 2020. NARFE members went above and beyond. We had a goal of 1.75 million. NARFE members contributed almost 2.2 million to the fund because we brought in more than we expected. We gave out more than we had anticipated. We had anticipated giving out 1.25. PAC contributions from NARFE members are going up and up every cycle, and I cannot thank you enough. This has been tremendous in allowing us to get in front of lawmakers, to express your concerns in front of lawmakers more often. So thank you for your support. Here is the contributions to NARFE PAC from North Carolina in the last cycle, broken up by national only members and chapter members. I want to thank the 31 of you, if any of you are on the call, for being a sustainer. Sustainers allow, sustainers allow NARFE to charge, NARFE PAC to charge their credit card a static amount every year, or I'm sorry, every month, which keeps a steady stream of money coming in, which allows us to plan and budget accordingly. Sustainers are crucial to the viability of the PAC, so thank you for that. Here are some of our goals for the current cycle, which is 2021 to 2022. I'm gonna keep raising as much as we can. NARFE members, as I said, have been very supportive of the PAC, but I'm not naive enough to think that that's gonna continue to stay that way. So we're aiming to raise 1.85 million and disperse 1.3. But Jesse, why is that extra what are you doing with that $500,000 difference? Well, it allows us to start the cycle off really strong. You need to have money in the bank at the beginning of each cycle, so that goes to that. NARFE PAC also pays the administrative expenses to administer the PAC, so some of that money goes to admin expenses as well. And we want to keep you guys in front of your lawmakers. So every cycle, we are increasing the number of in-district fundraisers we want to get NARFE members to. Our goal for this cycle is 120. Last cycle, NARFE members attended, I believe, 111 in-district fundraisers. So far this cycle, here are the numbers from the North Carolina Federation. Sustainer changes are normal. This doesn't terribly alarm me. People's credit cards expire. People's credit cards get stolen. So the sustainer number will change frequently. So thank you all for your support of the PAC. Like I said, I promise I will give you a gift if you so choose once you give to the PAC. The giving levels as well as the pins are on your screen. I'm just going to leave those up for a second, but say that is the conclusion of my presentation. Looks like I have at least a few minutes to answer questions. So thank you so much for that. Henry, are you still seeing the thank you slide, or are you just seeing my face now?
I am seeing the thank you pad as well as your face.
As well as my face? Okay, that sounds good to me. I'm happy if you guys just want to leave it up that way, because I want the email address to be visible if anyone has any questions.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much. You always do a great job, and we're very appreciative. Peter, any questions?
Jesse, this is Robert Allen. I have a couple of questions.
No, you don't. I wasn't expecting those at all.
First question is, how are you setting up the legislative day meetings for Wednesday during LegCon? The reason I ask is we have some chapters who've been able to set up meetings directly with their congressional representatives. So I'm wondering what headquarters take is on this, how you're doing it for us, for the rest of us.
Great. I would ask those chapters to kindly please stop doing that. We have partnered with a firm that is knowledgeable in organizing these types of events. It probably comes as no surprise to you that people are having more meetings now that they're virtual instead of less. I literally have more meetings than I have less. I believe this is my 4th today of 5. Congressional offices are no exception. They are inundated with requests. So we have partnered with a firm that is well respected on the Hill to set our lobby day meetings for us. We held a call with leaders on April 30th to walk them through that process. If you were unable to make that call and you have questions, you can contact the advocacy department at the email address on your screen, and we will provide you with a copy of that presentation so you can learn all about how that is done. If you are making these meetings on your own, we're not going to know about it. There will be duplicate requests, and we will do exactly what we are trying to avoid by partnering with a firm, and that is look disorganized. This is a way to allow NARFE to look more organized, more professional, allow those who are exceptionally well versed in navigating Hill offices to set our meetings and cast a favorable light on NARFE. So if you are one of those chapters, I would ask that you kindly reach out to the email address on your screen and work through this with my colleagues so everyone is on the same page. Doing your own meetings will inevitably cause all of us more headaches instead of less.
Thank you. The next question is, I think it was from today, it might have been yesterday's daily news line that you sent us, and there was a piece from one of the organizations that said, and the headline was a $90,000 average federal employee salary. Well, we know that's skewed, from a bunch of SCSs and the political appointees down to the GS3 who makes $20,000. But my question is, how does NARFE respond to that when President Biden, when he was a candidate, he said, we're looking for equitable pay between the private sector and public employees, federal employees. How does NARFE respond to when we see something as a $90,000 average salary?
So it's a really good question, because $90,000 is the average, right? What that ignores is why the average is not the figure you should be using when we're talking about any salaries, let alone federal ones. You are 100% correct. There are people outside of the general schedule, your air traffic controllers, for example. That's just one of many examples who are allowed to exceed the GS pay caps, right? So the average tells us nothing other than to gain some salacious headlines. And that doesn't help you guys at all. We have had issue briefs in the past, and I'll be honest, I haven't looked at the website in a while to know if they're still there, that kind of dispel the common myths associated with federal pay. And I think when faced with the facts, members of Congress, the American public understand that. The problem is, I will be honest, our facts are 3 sentences long, and $90,000 makes for a splashier headline than federal employees are underpaid, right? Especially when we're talking about an average salary of $90,000. So we do have some talking points as to why certain studies comparing private and public sector pay have been skewed. I'll be honest, I haven't really heard the pushback from that that I've seen in the past. So I'm heartened by that. But you're right. It makes my job and it makes your jobs all that much harder.
And one more question. Where do you think the COLA is going right now for retirees? Have you heard any talk about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know why? Because I looked it up this morning, so I feel like I can actually answer your question in an informed manner. Right now, the COLA, the monthly COLA was released today, which looked at the April figure. The April figure is 3% higher than the third quarter average of last year. I'm sure anyone who's purchased gas lately knows that the cost of living is rising. I had to wait in line at the gas station last night because there's a lot of misconceptions over our ability to get gas. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, the COLA is tracking with the increases in prices that we're all experiencing right now. So right now the COLA is 3% over the third quarter average of last year. Of course, we still have May, June, July, August, September. We got 5 months left. Those last 3 months will be averaged and compared to the third quarter average last year. But right now, COLA is looking pretty strong. The flip side of that is it means that all of us are experiencing higher prices.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good to hear from you, Robert.
Peter? Not hearing you, Peter. I'm not sure where Peter went, but we're very, very appreciative of all your time and energy. If I don't hear from him shortly that we have more questions, I want to thank you. There was a lot of interesting information in there, and I look forward to seeing you at the gala. And I did have one question. Is there any reduction for anyone who wears a tuxedo?
I don't know how the whole webcam situation is going to work for the gala. I am pleased to report, for the sake of my own sanity, that I have very little to do with the gala. LegCon keeps the advocacy staff busy enough, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there is probably no reduction in price for those wearing a tuxedo.
Yeah.
I can't say. We are working on.
Can we get a digital copy?
So. Go ahead.
Can we get a digital copy of your presentation, which is wonderful?
Yes, I'm going to send Henry a PDF version of my presentation once I fix the 2 typos I noticed while presenting this, as tends to be the case when you see it on the screen, and it's not printed black and white on my desk like it is right now. So I'm going to clean those up, and then I will send a PDF version over.
Yes, and we will be sending you, oops, wrong way, a one of our real coins when they show up, but we're very happy to have a commemorative coin and be able to give you one, and thanks for your having made this presentation. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for inviting me. You too. Have a great rest of your conference.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So long.